I'm going to do an update on the Bio Char that I made earlier this week, just to show you what it looks like. This is what it looks like. It's all compact. It's like one piece. It's like a cake. After you put the flour and you put the rock dust in there, comes one solid piece. That's the bacteria growing and the fungi growing in there that makes it compact like that. This one I did for my seed mix. Um, it's only been a couple of days. I really don't like to disturb it, but it's still nice and fluffy. Still nice and moist. So this is what I had that I made the other day, earlier in the week. Gonna use this for my seed mix, for my starter. So I mean, it looks good. Came out good. Smells phenomenal. Just has such a earthy smell to it. But it looks good. This is one that's about a month old. I stirred it up already. It's nice. It's good. This is fine. This is active biochar, where I put this particular one has rock dust, flour, and worm castings. So I'm gonna make up a new batch. I need more. I need to have enough to go around for things that I'm gonna do with it. So I'm gonna make up another batch. But something like this, I would take this, and when I'm doing my each hole for my planting, when I put my transplants in the ground out in the garden, this here I would take a handful and just put it in the hole with the dirt, mix it up. You want to really put it down at the root. That's where it's really gonna be beneficiary for the plants there. So you just want to put it down by the roots. You can mix it into your dirt if you have flower beds that you want to do pots. Just mix a couple of handfuls into it. It's already active, so definitely some good stuff. So looks good, nice and moist. Like I said, it's a month old. The longer you let it sit, the better it gets, the more mature it gets. So this here, though, I will probably mix in some bat guano. I didn't add no bat guano to this. I'm going to add some bat guano to this, and probably some rabbit manure, just to supercharge it a little bit more. It's wet enough, so I don't need to do anything else to it. So if it was dry, I would take water and molasses, because the molasses is going to feed the microbes in there, and the fungi. So that would actually help it even more activate it. So that's what I would do. That's how I do mine. So all right, so I'm gonna make up some biochar. I have a couple different ingredients here. I have kelp, alfalfa, crab meal, rabbit poop, well, rabbit manure that I shredded. I buy it whole and I shred it myself. That way I shred only what I need. So, and then a little bit of bat guano. Bat guano is number 2 on as far as microbes to actually help activate your biochar. So I'm going to use this cup, and I'm going to start measuring it out. This is some fresh biochar that I made over the week, last week, and the weekend. It was quenched, so it's a little moist now still. So that's going to be 1 part 2-part. Three-part. Usually I just do 3-part, but I'm going to do 4-part today. I have a lot of ingredients to add into it to activate it. So that's 4 parts of Bio Char. Now this Bio Char, I do sift this out. So this, but this wasn't sifted out. This is flakes and powder. So if I sifted this out, I would have powder, and then left in the sifter I would have the flakes. So that's what I like to use on this. So that's what this is. I am going to wet this down a little bit more because, like I said, I did quench it, but seeing that once you crush it and it's open, it actually has a lot of surface. So I'm going to start to wet this up a little bit. I'm not going to drench it, but I am going to wet it. And I would say you want it basically like you would do when you have your worm castings. This one likes to leak. So I'm just going to mix it up for the water I put on it. And if you know anything about biochar, it'll suck up the water. So I'm going to just add some more water to it. Still very dry. You always want to make sure when you're doing the biochar that you wet it down. I do make it dry where I don't add no water to it, but that's right after I quenched it, and I might crush it. On the bigger parts, the bigger nugget ones, that's what I'll do. I kind of do that dry. I do make this one dry, but I'm going to wet it up a little bit because it is dry. And as you saw, it wasn't fully dry. You saw no powder coming up, no dust. So it's not fully dry. But once you start adding all your ingredients in it, they're going to suck up the water too. So, I mean, that's good. That's good moisture there. But I'm still going to wet it up a little bit more. I'm going to move pretty quick. I don't want this to be a long video. But that's just how the biochar just sucks up the water. All the liquid that you put in it. So I'm just going to wet it up. And go from there. I mean, you can see from my gloves, this side is very dirty from it, but I mean, it's not sticking to my gloves. So it's real good moisture. Alright, so that's that. Now, I mean, the biggest thing is, it doesn't matter how you put it in, when you put it in. You just want to start to mix it. I mean, you could mix all of it in at one time and then blend it up. But that was the kelp. And the kelp has a lot of benefits to helping the activate the biochar. You might notice, like when I do, usually the bigger pieces, the nuggets or the bigger pieces, or the flakes, I'll soak them in a bucket with water and I'll let them just go, and I'll let them sit for a couple of days. Now I'm going to just add the alfalfa meal. You know, it's definitely something good to add in. It's good for your plant roots, potassium. Alfalfa's good. It's a good cooker. It'll really start to break down rather quickly. So you just want to add enough. Most of those were 2 ounces. So, I mean, that's still, I mean, as I said, see, it's starting to get a little drier as you start to add in all the other nutrients. Now I'm going to put in, and this is also 2 ounces of crab meal. And I think I said it before, I like this crab meal because it also has in it molasses, and that's going to help with activating the biochar, because there's a sugar source for the microbes and the biology and everything that's in it. So it's always a good thing. I always try to mix real good, get the corners, get it out of the corners, mix it real good, so every little part is coated. So I mean, that's perfect. It's a good blend. Now, the bat guano. I remember when I first got into gardening, I used to use from a company out of Maryland, bat guano. I mean, and oh my God, my collard greens, my kale, my lettuce. You add this in there, and they just go to town because it has a lot of nitrogen in it. So, a lot of microbes in there that actually help your plants take up a lot of the nutrients, you know, that you use fertilizer. I'm gonna do a couple of tests with this where I'm going to put this in a bed. And see how it does. And I'm gonna try. I'm not gonna use any fertilizer in there. I use all organic fertilizer anyway. I don't really buy anything synthetic. It's mostly all natural stuff. I use the Alaska fish emulsion. I use a lot of, I make comfrey tea, I make worm tea. So I feed them a lot of that stuff. I do use an organic fertilizer that I put down just when I do my beds, because some of the things that's in it has to break down before, so you got to do it 2 weeks ahead of time. So, but I'm going to do probably 1 or 2 beds with this particular mix that I'm making, and I'm not going to add any fertilizer to it. So this is the rabbit manure. This is probably about 3 ounces. And I mean, to be honest with you, I mean, this is 4 parts Bio Char. In here, I mean, if you look at this, you know, it's powder. It's the powder and the flakes. So it doesn't, it's not a whole lot. It doesn't look like a whole lot, but it's a lot. And by the time you go to do a plant, do your plantings, you could do quite a bit of plants with this. I mean, if you were going to put it in a hole, I would take a cup like this, which is a 6-ounce cup. Take about this much, and when you dig your hole, pour this in your hole, and then put the dirt, mix it in with the dirt a little bit at the bottom of the hole. Put your plant in there. Put the rest of the dirt back on top, and you can sprinkle a little of this on top just to give it a top dressing. Because as you water, it's going to go down into it, but you definitely want to put it in the holes. I also do the worm castings, so I put the worm castings on the bed, and I don't till my garden bed. I use a little cultivator, and I just chop it up just to break it up. I don't go far down, but just enough to break up the dirt. My dirt's pretty good. I mean, I have some very good dirt from over the years of doing gardening in the area and putting the compost and the worm castings down. Last year I had to plant some grass in an area that I had a problem with grubs, so I had to plant new grass in that area, and I used a lot of my worm castings for the grass to put down before I put down the grass seed, and then even after I put down the grass seed, I put that down. But what I'm going to also do this year is I'm going to take this biochar. I don't know if I'm going to activate it, but I probably will just take the powder biochar and top dress my grass with it, just to give it a, see how that does. See if it has any benefits to it. It's better to do the powder because it'll go down to the roots, but this way it'll go down to the roots. Something like this you could actually do the same thing with, because it's still very powdery. Even though it has some flakes, it'll go through, and you can plant it on your ground after you add your grass after you activate it. Water it in real good. But that's what I'm going to do. That's activated as far as that is concerned. Now I'm going to add some worm castings. Now the worm castings I have, this has a lot of already biochar in it, and this biochar is already active. So I'm not going to add more worm castings. I'm just going to use this because there are some castings in this. Actually, these are a little big, and I want to keep this rather small to the same. So I am going to add some casting to this. Give me a minute. I'll grab a bucket with some castings in it. The bucket I'm going to use, they're really fresh. They're from what I actually just did. So grab a bucket. So these are worm castings. I'm going to put in 2 parts worm castings because I did 4 parts of the Bio Char. I'm going to do 2 parts worm castings in here. I mean, it might seem like a lot of different ingredients, but what you put in is going to feed your plants. So anything you put in there is going to feed your plants. It's going to activate the biochar. So it is a good thing. So with the worm casting, that's what really kicks it up. That's what gets the biochar really activated with all the other ingredients that you put in. That's what's really going to get the biochar going. I mean, you can do anything you want. You can take this biochar after it's been activated. Of course, the longer it sits, the better it's going to be. That's why I try to do a batch every so often. So I have a new batch that's already ready and a batch that is going to be ready. So like that other batch I showed you in the white bucket, that's active biochar. That's a month old. So if I use it or I sell it on eBay, it's 2 months old, so it's still it's very good. It's already activated. So, but you could take this biochar, you can kick it up when you're ready to use it, and you can take your worm castings, and you could take and do 3 parts worm casting, 2 parts biochar. That's how I would use it. I'm no scientist with it. I just have had good success with the biochar with my plants. So you could take this because there's not a lot of worm castings. 2 parts worm castings in here. That's not a lot of dirt, but it's a lot of biochar. So, and as we all know, a little biochar goes a long, long, long way. I heard someone say one time that 1 piece of biochar is the equivalent of a football field as far as carbon footprint. That's a lot. So you don't need a whole lot. So to me, I would take this after it's activated, and then when I go to put it in my garden, I still may add, I may do, like I said, 3 parts worm castings, 2 part biochar, or two parts biochar and 2 parts. It just depends. It just depends what I'm growing. If I'm growing something that's a heavy feeder like broccoli and peppers and tomatoes, I would probably use a little bit more. I'd probably use more biochar. But like this, you have to play around with it and kind of just remember, write down what you put, how much you put, how you mixed it, and things like that. All right, let's get to the end of this. Now we're getting to the parts that are the biggest parts. So this is what's really going to feed the the micros. I remember seeing a guy who did the recipe, and I kind of use his recipe as far as what he does. It's usually after you do 3-4 parts Bio Char, 1 part or 2 parts worm castings. It's 1 part rock dust. I'm doing 3/4 part rock dust. A third, so that's still a lot of rock dust in there. So you have to play with it. You'll know what it is and how it works and what it does for you. If it's enough, if it's not. I think it's enough. I'm not going to say that 1 full part is overkill, but I just kind of eyeball it and kind of go how I feel. So you want to mix it in real good. Real good. You want to get it mixed in there real good. So, and of course, it's going to change the color. So, you really want to mix it in real good. So, but just mix it in real good. Just mix it up real good. I mean, until you really can't, you don't see any of the rock dust. But it does change the color of it. And this stuff just feels so good, I mean, when you do it. I mean, it's just so flaky, so fluffy. It's like baking a cake. But, alright, so I mixed that in. And then you want to do 1 part flour. Because that's also going to feed the micros. Now, of course, the rock dust is a little finer than the flour. So, and you just want to give them something to chew on. You want to feed them. And then a lot of times what I'll do is I'll check the moisture level of it. And I may add some water to it. So I let my water sit out for a little bit, for a couple of days prior to. I always got a container with some water in it that's sitting open